Do you have any political heroes?
There's a guy called Nigel, who I rate quite highly. Well, look, we can expand a bit on that, because, again, I'm a big believer in look at what people do, not what they say, right? And so when people say to me, do you think Nigel can be Prime Minister? I say, well, listen, kind of frankly, as you said, after having not come for money, I sold my company, and I was in a blessed position of not having to work for money anymore at a relatively young age. And I've dedicated, frankly, my entire life over the last 14 and a half months and subjected myself to what comes with the territory of frontline politics into doing everything I can to making Nigel our next Prime Minister of the country. And so that's the proof point on that. And it's because I believe in him. I think he's an extraordinary man. Outside of that, I would say, people like John F. Kennedy were very, very interesting and did some really interesting things. Abraham Lincoln did too. But the biggest one for me, and again, super cliched, is Sir Winston Churchill. Because, I think the things that, when you talk about cometh the hour, cometh the man, when you talk about being consistent for a whole number of years, he would not have been given the opportunity to take Hitler on had he not been so prescient and consistent in his views, in articulating what Hitler was really up to. And I don't want to draw unreasonable comparisons, but one of the reasons, no doubt, and I say this as someone who built like a consumer brand and built a consumer app, one of the reasons I think reform has surged in the way that it has is because Nigel has built his brand over 30 years. People know what Nigel stands for. And if you look at, I did a session earlier today with Merlin, a polling company, that suggests even people, a plurality of the people who wouldn't even vote for reform today, say that if Nigel's the Prime Minister, the votes would stop like that, right? Because people know Nigel will do whatever it takes to do the things he says he wants to do. And so, ultimately, I think I have huge respect for people who say things regardless of the social consequence of doing it. Remember all those years ago when Nigel used the word invasion? Do you remember that? And all the stick he got? Now, when we talk about invasion, we don't really get any pushback, because the dictionary definition of an invasion is an incursion by a mass of people in an unwanted way. And if more people have turned up on our beaches uninvited over the last 8.5 years and turned up on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, then one can, I think, accurately describe that as an invasion. Do you remember the billboard, the Breaking Point billboard? Do you remember that? Well, Lord, if that wasn't Breaking Point then, it certainly is now. So Nigel has been campaigning on these issues.